Managing files allows you to navigate systems within your computer very easily to the files you need to perform work, as well as to optimize systems. Most computers are set up with common nomenclature for styles for the arrangement and organization of information within a computer. We're able to standardize these by developing files and directories, naming conventions, and file indexes. So let's talk about some of the common attributes of files. To begin with, a file is a storage location for a data component, and a directory is the location to get the file. Naming conventions are the characters used for nomenclature, like characters like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and numbers. Basically, these are the letters and numbers that identify where things go. File names typically have 32 character fields. We use this information on the FAT allocation table as an index in a file system, where it has a pointer that points to each file and where it's stored on the hard drive. We have several identifiers we use for the organization of files, beginning with the file name, which identifies the file to the user, extensions, which identify the type of file it is, like a Word, a PowerPoint, or a PDF, and then we have attributes. An attribute is the type of action a file can take, such as its read-only, or a hidden file, or a system file, or an archive file. File names also have a time and a date, as well as the size. And you can have up to 256 possible combinations of attributes. Within files, you have what is called an association link. A file association links the file extensions of the file names to the programs that can be used to open the file. File associations let the operating system know what program should be used to open a specific type of file. It's similar to a pointer. So if I click on a PowerPoint file, I actually want it to open a PowerPoint, not a Word or Excel document. Executable files can actually perform tasks on a system. Some of the most common ones are shown in this slide. They generally perform tasks or execute applications based on their extensions. Let's examine a few of these on this slide. For example, a .bat file is actually a batch file which holds a series of commands that are sequentially typed into a text file. A .cmd file is a command file which executes commands that are typed into a text file. A .com file is a command file within a command shell interface, and a .txt file is a command line file that can be executed. And then finally we have a PS1 file, which is actually a PowerScript script, which is a super batch file. So all of these files perform activities and actions within a hard drive. They execute actions and they make things happen. Like the exec file, that's a common file you'll see on the fourth line there. It's a command file that actually makes things happen. When you click on that, it implements or activates a lot of software that go into data that go into the operating system, which make a file and a system happen and occur. So you actually have the activity that occurs after you click on the exec file. And that's one of the things we talk about in our security chapter. When people click on an exec file hidden in a link in an email, it actually executes an action on a computer, and sometimes that can cause detriment. On this slide, we show a number of the common application file extensions. These are applications you can perform on the computer, such as the development of files, document templates, PowerPoint documents, maybe Adobe portable document files, or Microsoft Excel. Some of the most common ones are shown here, and these are some of the most commonly used Microsoft Office products, such as Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook Mail, and Microsoft Notes, like we show here. Compression files are used or designed to save space by either compressing a file or decompressing a file. Compressed file extensions make it easier or smaller for them to be emailed or make them require less space when they're stored on a drive. And there are many types of compression utilities and compression extensions available, such as WinAce or BenHex or cabinet files or other zip file types. Then you have a number of system files. System files drive the computer's operating system. You'll see a number of these within the registry, and they perform very specific functions to help the computer manage data and to perform operational processes. And these might include backup files or data files or initialization files, possibly error messages or device drivers. You can see quite a few of the titles here. You'll also see a number of graphic files, and these are used for printing or graphic standards. A number of these are common for pictures or graphic files, including the .bmp, the .gif, which you call a GIF file, JPEG files, PDF files, PNG files, or TIFF files. And these are commonly used to identify bitmaps, graphic interchange formats, Adobe portable documents, tagged image files, or portable network graphics. These are common for a lot of picture files. There are a number of other file extensions. It may take a bit to learn what they do or what purposes they serve, but operationally you want to be aware and pay attention to whether they're executable, an application, or a system file. So here are some examples that provide information for servers. They provide information for digital audio. They're available to store data for websites, or they represent temporary files, maybe possibly text files, and sometimes audio files. So let me test your basic knowledge of computer file name nomenclature. In this first question, which of these file extensions is not an executable file? The answer is A, a dot file. A dot file is an application file extension used for document templates. The command file and bat file and VBS files are executable file extensions. Okay, let's do one more. Which of the following file extensions is not an application file? And again, the answer is A. A PS1 file is an executable file for the PowerShell script. The PPT is for PowerPoint, XLS is for Excel, and DOC are for the doc. And those are all application file extensions for documents. Next, we'll talk about file attributes. There are 4 basic attributes which include read-only, hidden, system, and archive. The attributes described are common actions that a file can take. For read-only, they cannot be deleted, written to, or saved over. I guess that makes sense strictly by the title. For hidden, they are invisible to the users and cannot have their attributes changed. System files are required by the operating system and cannot be changed. And then finally, archives are used for archiving and backing up data. So those are the 4 basic types. There are also 3 extended attributes, which are compression, encryption, and indexing. The compression allows on-the-fly compression of data. Encryption allows you to encrypt files instantaneously. And the indexes are used by the operating system as an indexing service. Encryption is used to protect a file from being read. You can perform simple encryption on a file by right-clicking the file and choosing Properties. In the Properties dialog box, you want to click the Advanced button, and then from there you go to Advanced Attributes, and you can click Encrypt this file by selecting Encrypt Contents, and then check in the box. Encryption provides a good means of security. Public Key Infrastructure, or PKI, uses an authentication system as well, where you have a pair of keys, and these 2 pairs of keys are private keys and then public keys. So the private key is known to the user, and the public key is known to the other people that use the infrastructure or the system. And these are stored on certificates that help to encrypt and decrypt your information. There are different ways you can change the attributes on a computer, such as through the command line or through Windows GUI. To use the command line, you need to use the accessories in the command window and use the command prompt, and then choose the ability to run it as an administrator. Once you're at the command line, you can enter commands such as attribute.exe, which processes files and subdirectories. In the Windows GUI interface, you might right-click on a file, and then you can select the options for read-only, hidden, or archive. This allows you to annotate or mark files as you see fit, so nobody can overwrite them, and to where you have the ability to hide files if necessary so users don't access them. And you can identify specific files for the system, or even develop your own archive files so you can set those for backups. So the command prompts I just mentioned are necessary for IT support individuals to resolve problems. It gives you a different layer of tools you can access through the command prompt for GUI interfaces, which allow you to check on disk or do fragment disk or optimize some of your systems. In order to find a list of the available services on a computer, you type in the command prompt dir, that's shown here on the screen, dir, the letters dir, in the directory, and it'll give you a list of the common services available. So you have a number of options, and you can even copy, move, or develop a list of task lists under the directory. This video demonstration shows you how to manage files within the Windows 10 operating system. This is a fairly common setup that you'll see computers listed in, just showing the basic overview of of what it looks like when you're looking at the files on a particular computer. So what you have here is basically an overarching view of everything that's on the computer. These are what's on your operating system. These are any other drives that you may have, whether they're external hard drive or a DVD. So right now on this computer, there's your main operating system and one external drive. These are your common things that you've got, such as your videos or downloads, music, pictures, or documents. So on the left here, you have some segments of activity where you can look at the things that are quick access, and these are the things I tend to go to the most. You've got your OneDrive, which when we talk about cloud storage and adding extra capability for storage to a computer, that's where you want to put those, is in the cloud file. The PC file lets you know everything that's basically on this computer. I've got a network, so if this computer were hooked to a network right now, I would be able to identify network drives. And then your operating system. Your operating system is going to have a lot of files under it as far as your typical applications that are on a computer. And you can see some of them here. These are a lot of the applications on here related to what type of computer it is. We've got a Dell computer here with specific drivers that are available on an Intel platform. So all of these files are needed by the operating system to make things flow smoothly and to work. The user file will keep everything under it that specifically has data related to one particular person. So this is my file here. Don't have anything in the public or any of the default files. Up here on your left-hand side, I like this because it has a lot of information or gives you some flexibility working with your computer to map a drive or add network locations if you're on a network. And then to easily sort or view things. And the reason I bring this up, let me go to just some documents. Got some general documents that are loaded on here. And we go to my desktop. That'll make it a little bit easier. When you go to view, a lot of times you get clients they get confused on where files and where folders are. So I try to share the view with them. A lot of times they'll have maybe an icon, and these are some icons that have various information in them. You can tell, real common ones are PDF documents or Word documents, but they can't always, how would you sort this? You don't know the date or the time or anything that goes on here. So I tell them to click on the view, go to the details tab, and the details tab allows you to sort it alphabetically by name, and then it also lets you sort it just by clicking here at the top by date range as far as what's the most recent and what was the oldest thing that's on whatever drive. I like it that you can sort it by the type, so you know if it's just a folder or if you know it's a PowerPoint or a Word document, PDF file. And then by the size, sometimes when you're working with things, you want to take the largest file and put it somewhere else, like a different or a separate drive. And this gives you that ability to do that. This is the largest file on here with a PowerPoint template at about 16,000 kilobytes. Okay, so when we go to the program files, this has a list of files for everything related to the computer. Talked about the one specific to Dell or Intel, but everything that's needed by Microsoft to run this computer. Anything I have security related, anything that helps me with graphics support, or any other detailed Windows parts such as Windows Defender. So there really is a hierarchy under each one of these computer files, which allows easy access for the computer to know what to do and make it a little bit easier for applications or running things. So I've got a lot of common files and a lot of shared files, and really you need to be familiar as a CompTIA professional of going through here and being able to tell where some of the most common files and folders are related to things such as Windows security and what kind of applications and what kind of program files you've got here. So with these program files, there's a lot of things that I may need to go in and work at. These are some Office program files. Some of these things you'll touch and some of those you won't. Remember, we had things that are hidden attributes, things that are read-only and write-only. So you want to understand kind of the nomenclature for the types of applications and what they are. Here's an XML document, which is basically a Word file. This one here is a specific application, and here's a script file. So Each one of these will have some different type documents that you may or may not want to adjust or make any kind of settings to unless you understand exactly the specific function. But you need to know where to search for these. A lot of times, if I'm not sure where a specific file is, I can type in like a MSC and come up with a system configuration. If you know even the start or the heading of a file or a folder, you can type it in here, and a lot of times it'll get you to where you want to be at. Or I kind of look up sometimes, what's the specific root file for an operating system file that I want, and where is it located at? And a lot of times you can find these on techie websites to take you exactly to where you want to be at. So it's important that you understand, you've got your main drive file folder. And this is what's on here, the operating system, and it's annotated by the C with a colon. And then under that, each drive has its own hierarchy. So as we click the buttons here, we're working down in kind of a tree shape. And depending on how many files or what we have under an area, there can be quite a few different files and folders underneath there. You can see a lot of things that I work with on projects and things like that. So each one of these has its own file and folder underneath there that can be sorted or worked at. So just remember when you're working with file and folders, they have a hierarchy. Sometimes you need to partition a drive, and I think that's important when you're working to be able to partition a drive. And basically you can type in partition down here at the bottom, and it'll take you to creating and formatting hard disk partitions. Simply click that. So this takes you to the disk management function. You can relabel or sort these by different types of activities. Trying to give you an example. Here's just your disk list right here. You can view it as a volume list. Just leave it on that. That's basically what Windows is set at. But sometimes you need to partition a drive, and basically that lets you make a drive that has a separate section that you can put a different nomenclature to. Like this is C:, you could recall it a different type of drive. So to do that, you want to right click on here and click shrink your volume. You got to wait a minute or so. It shouldn't take too long, under a minute commonly. And this will take you to what you'll be able to shrink your drive to and build a partitioned storage out of. So when you're looking at what your available size is in megabytes, 1024 megabytes is 1 gig. So right now, this is a relatively new computer. There's not a lot of space to shrink. It says right here, you cannot shrink a volume beyond the point where any unmovable files are located. So I can only shrink this so far. You've got options if you've got an older computer to shrink this by whatever amount you want. I could put in 10 gig. If I did that, just take 1024 and multiply that times 10 and pick the particular size that I wanted. Anyway, what I can do is I can shrink this just up here, this amount, 656 megabytes, just to show you what we do as far as partitioning. So I right clicked on that, and then I wanted to go ahead and crunch it up or volumize that. And really that 659 meg is right here. So I can call this a new simple volume. Just click on the wizard and it'll tell you what's there. So roughly it's got a half a gig for the volume size on here. I can assign it a drive letter. You can assign it A through whatever. So Microsoft just picked E there. I'm going to leave that there. And you can really choose what kind of volume you want on there. So when we talk about our disk drives and storage, we'll cover some of this in our video demonstration there. And then you click next. This tells you a little bit of information, where the file path is, what type of file system it is, how it's formatted, and you click finish. So it's formatting that drive, and now I have a new drive, which is E, and I can even name that. I could call that, Robert's special file folder or things like that. What I like to see is these are all healthy and they're in pretty good condition. What you may want to do sometimes if you don't want to keep it that way, I can generally go back and I can extend this volume here, and I can recombine the two of these. So I'm going to leave this volume here, but if I want, a lot of times I may want to recombine these, but for right now I'm going to fill that up and put some information on that drive and keep that where it's at with about half a gig. But a couple of things that you can look at is you've got a basic drive and you've got a dynamic drive. So generally when I go in here and I want to shrink a volume, it'll give me the option to convert over to a dynamic drive. And what a dynamic drive does is it'll highlight these in different colors, and I could have a B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, all the way to Z. Even I've seen ZZ drives and AA. So I can build about as many partitions or different slices on this piece of pie, if you will, to put information on. And that's how you put those together, just by partitioning those. So just remember, when you're looking at your disk, it's really just a simple hierarchy of where documents are and where you want to put information and how it should be stored. So it's good to be familiar with a lot of the operating system files and folders, and be careful. You don't want to destroy any files that you may need. You want to make sure whenever you work with your clients, you go ahead and you make a backup of all the files that they have on their system on some kind of a backup, so you've got a healthy, strong backup that you can use should anything go wrong, because you obviously don't want to damage what your clients or customers have. So I appreciate you joining me, and this was our operating systems files and folders under the Microsoft 10 Windows system. So I appreciate you joining me. Thank you very much.